This is our woodblock carving kit for beginners. It contains pretty much most of the tools that you need to make a simple woodblock carving print. However, as I know about this much about woodblock carving, I've invited Zephyr along today, who knows a significant amount more than I do. So Zephyr, you do a lot of block carving and printing.
Yeah.
And you've had a little bit of a look through this kit. Do you think you could make a nice little print with its contents?
Oh, most definitely.
All right.
I think it's a great starting point.
Cool. All right. Well, could you run me through, because I've gone through the kit and I know what these things are, but I don't know how they're used.
Okay.
So would you be able to give me a run through of what these things do?
Okay. Well, we've got the wood,
Yeah.
non-slip mat, which is a lifesaver. Graphite paper for tracing the image. There's the paper. This is the Baron to burnish the image onto the paper.
Yep.
We got some paint brushes to mix the paint and put it on the block, and a whole bunch of carving tools for different points in the process. And yeah, I mean that's all you need.
Cool. So, for someone who's never done a woodblock carving like myself, could you please run me through the steps that I'm going to need to walk through?
Okay, so there's two main types of printmaking. There's intaglio and relief, and this is relief printmaking, which is where what you draw on an image to the woodblock, and what you carve away will be not included in the final image. And intaglio is the opposite. Everything you carve gets filled up with ink, but we don't need to focus on that. So today we've got this delicious looking bread we're going to make, which has two colors. There's the dough, which is orangey kind of thing, and then the black seeds, I suppose, on top.
Yep.
So that means we're going to have to do two blocks. So we'll use both sides, and we'll trace this image twice onto each side of the block. And we're going to use these things called registration marks. So when we print onto the paper on this side, say we print the orange dough on this side, and when you flip it over and you print it on that side, you use these registration marks so these seeds are in the exact same spot relative to the dough. And so for that, we've got in the pamphlet there's the image, and these marks here are the registration marks. So we're going to line up some tracing paper and then trace those marks and then this shape. And you know, in the future, like, these are arbitrary, but they need to be the same. This will be the master image, and we'll use this to trace onto both sides of this block. So once that's happened, we're going to carve out this red line. We'll carve out everything outside of it, and that will become the first block. And we'll print that, and then we'll use the same bit of tracing paper and trace the same image with the same registration marks, so it's all relatively distanced, and then carve everything but these black seeds.
Okay.
Then we'll ink up them and print that again. And then we'll have a bread roll.
Yeah, and so once we've carved a block with the registration marks, we can register the paper consistently every time we print?
Yep.
And we can print as many as we want?
As many as you want, yeah. That's the magic of, like, yeah, you get hundreds if you wanted to print hundreds of bread rolls, why not?
Do you reckon bread rolls would make a good Christmas card cover?
Oh, definitely.
All right, I might be out of the woods here.
Yes.
I like it. Awesome. Great, all right, well,
Let's get started.
Let's go, yeah.
Okay, so I might just move that. And I'll just line up the corner of this tracing paper.
Yep.
On these dotted lines. And I might just tape that down, so.
Tape not included in the box?
No.
Yeah, okay. So it is tracing the design onto the tracing paper exactly as it appears.
It doesn't matter if you're not like perfect copy of that, because this is going to be the thing you trace on the block. So
okay.
If I go a bit out, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Because this will become the master image.
This is still only the template that we'll then draw from onto the timber.
Yeah.
And the timber is the mark that matters.
Yes,
okay.
That's right.
Right. Great.
And for the registration marks, definitely use a ruler, because you want that as accurate as possible. So this L shape here is going to be the corner of where the paper goes, and this line here is just a mark to kind of angle that off. It's just to show you where to carve later.
Okay.
All right. So that's fully traced. We've got the registration marks and the image. So we can take that off now. We don't need this pamphlet. And what we're going to do now, it's lucky this grid paper is great to work with because the corner of this, the corner of the grids, we can line that up with the corner of this wood block. Oh, there, like that. And then we'll tape that down. Like that. Okay, I'm just going to cut off a bit of this excess so I can tape it to the block, because you don't want it to move when you're tracing it. And this, I guess there's one thing to consider. So when we see this is the L shape. That's where you first put the paper. So once we trace this and carve it, you have a choice. If you're left-handed, I'm right-handed, but I seem to prefer to do it on the left side. So we'll get to the printing part later, but you put this corner into that L shape and then lock it off with the straight line on the other side. I prefer to use my left hand putting in there, but you could flip it over and use your right hand as like the main lead to register.
Okay.
So it really doesn't matter which side you go for. But this part you're going to try and get as accurate as possible, because you have to recreate this on the other side, this registration. I moved it, didn't I?
That's my style.
Yeah. So again, just the edge of the tracing paper grid is on the edge of the wood block. And now we get this graphite paper and we trace over this again. Everything, the registration marks and the image.
And this will transfer everything to the wooden block?
Yes. So have the dark side face down, and any pressure that's put on this will leave, it's kind of like a chalky kind of feeling thing. It'll leave an impression on the wood. So if we put that under. And trace over everything again.
Cool. So you're trying to make sure that the grid paper stays in the same place in relation to the wood block the whole way through that process.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit finicky, but it makes your life a lot easier later down the track. Okay. Now, we pretty much repeat this. Let's have a look.
Oh wow.
And see, that's come up really quite nicely.
Nice and crisp.
We do this on the other side. Now, technically, you don't have to draw. I just drew this just so we can see the image pretty clearly. I could have just drawn that circle, because this side will just be the orange bun, and this side will just be the seeds. But just for sake of seeing things easily. And you can use this time and time again. They last for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you go over somewhere you've already gone over.
No. Because you'll rarely go exactly the same spot.
For a large print, does this process take a lot of time?
Yeah, definitely. The larger you go, the more time it takes. But once you have your image finalized on the block, you can kind of stop thinking about the design and just focus on carving, which is really important, I've found.
So when you're doing a large print on a transparency for tracing, do you do a few drafts and a few revisions before
Yeah,
you
definitely. I
lay it
often
down?
draw on different bits of paper and compile them later onto the tracing paper. Something like this. Okay. Let's just have a look. Perfect.
Cool. So this one we're just doing the seeds.
This will just be the seeds this side.
Great.
Now we can get rid of this. Get to my favourite part.
So now we carve.
Now we carve.
Excellent.
So there's a few ways. I feel like a lot of people have different ways to do carving. But what I like to do is start with a V gouge to get the shape. We'll start with the bun side. I use a V gouge to get a finer line. V gouges and U gouges, they're the main two tools you kind of come across. I'll use a V gouge to outline this area and then use wider and wider U gouges to clear out this excess. And with something like Woodblock, you don't need to carve away the entire block because we're going to be using a brush and we can focus the ink just on this part. But we do need to get rid of, you know, probably 1 or 2 mils worth of depth. So.
Alrighty. So in this selection of tools,
Yes.
have you had a chance to have a look at what you think would be the most useful?
Yes, so where is this? This is the V gouge. So I'll use this right up against this line. And this is good for detail, this is good for finer lines. I often use V gouges as that's my go-to.
Okay.
And then after that, I'll find a smaller, or comparatively to the other ones, this is quite a skinny, small U gouge to start clearing out some space away from this line that I've just cut there. And then you can just work up bigger and bigger up to something like that, which will be clearing a lot of
material.
Wood. And then you can use something like a flat chisel kind of thing to flatten out the edges once it's far away from the relief, which is what we're going to print. And I also use this one to get straight lines on these registration marks on both sides.
Okay. Nice.
But we'll do this carving first, the fun bit.
Nice. In terms of carving on a timber block as opposed to something like lino, which doesn't have a grain, is there any different way that you approach it?
Yes, definitely. So with wood, it's and this will kind of come naturally. You'll feel it when you're carving. You've got to work with the grain, and obviously not every image will be drawn, you know, with the grain. So you kind of have to find a compromise. So for this, for example, the grain is running this way. So I'm gonna kind of I'm gonna break it up into 4 kind of approaches to this circle. I'll carve this kind of quarter first, and then kind of that kind of angle. So it's kind of moving with the grain. You will have to fight it, and you know, not too much, but you'll feel when it's a lot easier to carve that way than
across.
Against it.
Yep.
And then so I'll go that way there and that way for this corner.
Cool.
And these are sharp. These are very sharp. But believe it or not, I've never cut my hands carving wood blocks or lino. And it's just if you just get yourself in a good practice or good rhythm of never putting your hand in front of it. You can do complex shapes. I've done really complex blocks and I haven't needed to hold my hand in front of this blade. You can always work around it. That being said, holding it, whatever feels good. Some people like holding it kind of like that. I like, for these longer, I feel like that kind of, you can get a nice angle, I feel. But But it really does, I don't think there's any wrong way of doing it.
Have you ever found yourself clamping it to the bench, clamping the piece to the bench or anything like that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, definitely. But I feel like this second hand can be really good for that, because I like to have one of these 3 fingers just sitting next to it, not putting any pressure on, because that'll damage the tool. But it's just almost like a fail-safe. If you do slip, this finger will kind of stop it a bit. And it also puts weight on the block to hold it to the table, and it makes sure that your hand's not in front of this spiky tool.
Even just seeing it like that makes me itchy.
Yeah, I don't even like doing that, yes. So, let's go. And another thing I like to do, I rarely carve exactly on this line.
Okay.
Say, because if you carve on that, it's actually going to be a bit smaller than what we're seeing as the image, or what we want as the image. So generally, this outside part is what we're getting rid of. It won't be in the print. So I'll carve just that side of this line. Okay. And I found it's easy to see the image when you still have a bit of that, the graphite, the transfer powder, still kind of visible on the block. So here we go. And you'll feel it gets harder and harder the more I lean against the grain. So it kind of becomes pretty natural to try and work with the grain.
Nice.
And it's this kind of craft, this kind of art is, I find it so fascinating. It's so forgiving and unforgiving at the same time. Okay. It's unforgiving because every mark you make will be potentially shown in the print, but at the same time, you can have a very basic image, and through this process, it looks fantastic. Like you see some of this wood, the wood grain can show up on the paper in the last print. It's just pretty cool. So now I've got that original shape, and that's going to be the edge of the bun on the paper. So that's the kind of cautious part, and this next part is kind of fun because you can just really hook into the wood. But I will still start off with the smaller U-gouge and just kind of make sure I don't hit the inside line of this shape, because you don't want to dent that. But I'll use a similar principle, do it in quarters, working with the grain.
So if I've made a small error with that V-gouge and I've clipped into the bun, for example, is there any way of remedying that?
Totally. Okay. What you can do is, say I've nicked into this, you can use just one side of this to kind of shave that little section until that little nick has kind of been smoothed into the back into that kind of shape, you know. But like I said, those little imperfections add to the look. Okay. I reckon. All right. And another thing to note about these tools, often you'll be sitting for hours and hours because it's so satisfying doing this. But when I have cut myself, it's when I've gone to scratch my head and I've used this hand. So I think I've got scabs and scars on my forehead. So that's another thing to be very cautious of.
And particularly risky for nose pickers.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good reason to give up the habit.
Okay.
So now I've gotten away from that, I can relax a bit and pick up a bigger bigger U-gouge tool, and just repeat the process until we just clear it away. Just so when we're inking, we want about 1.5 fingers, 2 fingers away from this relief, because if you see now, this brush would pick up ink on that side.
Yep.
So that's a good way to measure it. About that.
Half a brush.
Half a brush away.
Cool. So this is a little bit of ply that comes in the kit. Have you done woodblock carving on things other than ply?
Any kind of soft wood works.
Okay.
I would avoid MDF because carving that, the fibres aren't so good if you breathe them in. But I think ply is great.
Okay.
I've mainly used ply actually.
Okay.
And see, that brittle break off wouldn't happen if you were just using a fine tool. That's just me going a bit ham. So, but that wouldn't happen when you're using a V-gouge, and that's fine. We're going to get rid of that anyway. Okay, I might go up to the biggest one now.
So you got a lot of liberty once you've
That's right.
got a bit of space. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Once you start to really work away, you can see, parts you might need to go back over and carve away, just so it doesn't pick up any ink. But you don't have to be super anal about that, because a bit of ink outside of the image still adds to the, I think anyway. Depends what you.
It depends on the aesthetic, I guess.
How perfect you want the print. I like prints looking like they're prints. So there's little happy accidents. And the good thing about ply is you can see the different colour, so you kind of can gauge how deep you're going, which is nice.
So going just through the top level of the ply is probably enough.
Yeah,
Okay.
I reckon.
Which part of the process do you enjoy more, the carving or the printing?
The carving, I think.
All right.
It's incredibly satisfying. I mean, it's great because once I'm sick of drawing a design, I'm ready to carve.
Yep.
Once I'm sick of carving, I'm ready to print.
Right.
And then you go to print, and then you can start all over again.
Virtuous circle.
Yes, that's it. It's a pretty wonderful art form. It originated in China in like the 7th century, and then made its way to Japan, where it became really popularized, and during the Edo period it became very commonplace. You'd see prints everywhere. It started out as reproduction of texts and stuff like that, but it quickly became a very popular way of, like, ukiyo-e prints were hugely popular, and there's quite a lot of historical significance of dispersion of knowledge, and then it's I'm not sure when it shifted, but it started off as a craft and has become quite a revered art form. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Might get a flat chisel now. Maybe this one, and just try and smooth off these kind of edges around here. This is just like just to make sure, because if you go a bit too short, a bit too far out, there's quite a lip here. So if you smooth that out, there's less chance of your brush inking that up.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do now is just make sure there's these little mountains, peaks and troughs. See, that's a bit high. Maybe that might pick up some ink. So
bring it down. So something like that.
Yeah, yeah. You're a natural.
Oh, I'm something. I spent so long obsessing over trying to get timber square and straight that the idea of just
mutilating it.
Of just, you know, sort of just removing it for the sake of removing it kind of scares me. Satisfying though. Getting that sort of constant radius on a curve is a bit of a trick, isn't it? I mean, I'm not trying to hit a line or anything, but
yeah, I find slow and steady. You just to get the best lines, a constant speed.
Okay.
So sometimes I will carve fast, but generally just try and keep the same pace. And it will show, especially when you're using a V-gouge. You'll have nice lines if it's a constant pace.
Okay. I'll try one of these bigger ones.
Yeah?
See what they're going to do.
Maybe this one.
That one?
And just flatten down some of these.
Flatten down the corners?
Yeah.
What am I missing? Is that all right?
That's looking great. Yeah. All right.
Cool. Lovely.
Let's do these registration marks.
Alrighty, I'll hand that back to you.
Okay. So for that, we'll use this flat chisel. So this one's a bit different. It's a bit rounded. It's a bit thin, obviously, but it's got this curve, which is good for carving away. This is great for scoring, kind of getting a straight line. And then that'll inform, I'll punch that in like that, these kind of points, and then I can use this, and the wood will want to break at that part that you've scored. And you try and get this exactly on the line. So it's a bit different to carving this, because you want this to be exact.
So that triangle is going to stay.
No, this triangle is what the section we're going to carve away.
Ah, okay, all right, now I'm with you.
And this bottom line is where the paper will butt up against.
Ah, cool, all right.
So once we carve that away, there'll be a little lip that this catches on. Yeah, so these angled lines don't matter too much where you kind of cut it. This is the line that matters.
Okay.
Because this has to be the exact same spot on this side.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's do this one. Go back to like kind of a wider U-gouge. And I'll get rid of this angle first and then work into this L shape here. And I use a flat chisel to get right up against, I can see where I've scored, but still a bit of wood kind of curving up to that because I use the U-gouge. So I use this you can see that coming up just to that spot there. And now that's showing that perfect score that we did with the big chisel. You see it wants to come up because we've scored it. So, very important part. A good way to check is just see how comfortably you can just get it into that corner. That feels pretty good for me. And get it locked in pretty easily. And that's a mil max.
Okay.
All right, well that's one side done.
Cool.
So we got, this will be the orange bun. And then we flip it over. And we can just on the seeds.
Mm-hmm.
So we can make a smaller, we have to go quite wide around this bigger shape. We can just make a small little, again, half a brush width, I reckon.
Yep.
And again, these are small shapes. So I'm going to go back to the V gouge.
Mm-hmm.
And with a smaller shape like that, you're going to have to go against the grain. So I'll keep spinning this clockwise.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, you know how we went 4 quarters, 4 kind of different angles.
Mm-hmm.
With a smaller shape and a V gouge, it's fine just to keep spinning it around, I reckon. And again, I'm carving on just the outside of the line. Because if you carve on the line, it's going to be a lot smaller than what we're looking at, what we have drawn it as. Yeah, sometimes when I first started, I'd just practice doing shapes. So get used to the medium and used to the tools. And tiny circles are a great test.
It seems to me to be probably one of the hardest shapes I could think of.
Yeah. To get a perfect circle is...
All right. But seeds aren't perfect circles, are they?
No,
cool.
no, this is fine. This is great. And when you're carving this, it's sometimes hard to see where you're cutting it when you're doing such a small shape. If you know what the negative space is, what you're getting rid of, always feel free to just lean into that and then check it again. So if I don't know if I'm going too tight, just cut away from the shape that you want to keep, and because that doesn't matter, you'll be getting rid of it at some point.
Cool.
So there's still a bit of tight or not much distance between some of these shapes. So I carve them all out. I might use this to use this as just getting rid of the excess till we get a bit outside of it, and then I can step up to my U gouges again.
So in terms of the colorizing of a print, do you prefer to work in a lot of colors, a limited palette, monochromatic? How do you like to
Well,
work?
I've done both, a bit of both. At the moment, I've gone back to just black prints because this is a multi-block print. So this is one side and this is the other. And with multi-block prints, it's a lot harder to register the image. So get the seeds in the right spot. But color is very forgiving and it looks great together. But with monochromatic stuff, for me, it's easier. You can just cut an image and smack that paper on any old which way.
Yep.
And that just makes you kind of focus more on the content of the image. And it's made me make more complex imagery instead of relying on colors.
Okay.
You know?
Do you see bread and buns becoming a motif in your work in the future?
Funny you say that. I'm doing a whole loaf series when I go home.
Yeah.
So when we're inking this up, it'll be hard not to get some ink in the cracks, but with firm paper and an even pressure from the barren, hopefully it'll only pick up the relief, which are the top of these seeds. You know, there is a point where you can't carve any further because you'll hit the
seed
seeds
itself.
Yeah.
How much detail can the paper pick up off the block?
A surprising amount. You can get a surprising amount of detail. I'd say as much as you want out of the block, you could get that on paper and it reads clearly.
For better or for worse?
For better or for worse, yes. Do you want to have another go?
Yeah, sure.
So now we're just clearing this out a bit.
Cool.
I reckon you can go up to this one.
Okay. Yep. Non-detailed work, my strength. Do you ever use printer paper for the printing, or is it?
For printing, no, I use like a acid-free archival paper. It's often like cotton-based. You get them at most art shops.
Okay.
And I prefer thicker paper because it just feels more substantial. Thinner paper is easier to burnish because you can get more pressure and it's more absorbent because it's just easier to emboss and get the ink into it. You kind of have to push this a bit harder the thicker and thicker you go. So
Okay.
I feel like this is 180, 200 GSM. So it's getting thicker. I print on 220.
Okay.
And the larger you go, the more elbow grease you kind of need. And with these chisel knives, I think a nice way to use them is you can, say we're trying to just get rid of this excess around the seed. If you come close up to the relief where you want to keep, it can kind of punch that down right next to it and then come from a different angle. And it kind of, see how that just chipped out? You can do that kind of a approach. I might just widen this out a bit and then do that, and then we'll be ready to print.
Cool. Do you have blocks that you would spend days carving?
Yes, yes. I think the longest I've spent is start to finish a print took me 2 months.
Wow.
I mean, obviously not
Right.
carving every day, but
Cool.
that's great.
Some of that. I might try a
Yeah.
little test piece. Is that how you'd want it?
Yeah. Let's see. Because you got to keep it kind of raised because you don't want to smudge it before you lay it down. Yeah, that's great.
Cool.
Yeah, great.
Give myself a pat on the back.
Amazing.
So we've got the carving done, registration marks in, cleaned up the bench a little bit, and we're ready to print. Awesome.
Yeah, clear bench space, clear mind. That's what I say.
Don't take a close look at my bench.
It's all just on the floor. So we've carved it out, and what we want to do now is just get rid of these the graphite marks off the actual wood blocks. So we'll just get, this is 400 grit.
Yep.
And we can just, this is just because sometimes that graphite will come off in the print.
Would you ever finish the timber? Like, would you, if you gave it a very fine sand, would it print differently to if it was just a natural finish?
Yeah, so I think there is some theories about that. If you use a fine, and this applies to lino as well, if you sand it a bit more, there's more chance for pigment to sink into the wood, and so you can collect more on the block, which will be more transfer to the paper in the actual print. But it's not entirely necessary. I mean, wood has a grain already, so I'll just do the top of these as well. That should be fine. Okay, we'll start with this side because this will be the base. Normally you work with the lighter colour to darker colours.
Okay.
And generally, obviously, black will be the last. You bake the bread, then you put the seeds on, right?
I'll have to follow procedure on that one, yeah.
So I reckon about 4 parts red, 1 part yellow. Hopefully that'll bring out some orange. And then, and we'll just use a bit of water. You can always add more, so start pretty sparse amounts. See, that's still pretty red, hey? And this is the fun part. You mean, you just trial and error. You get colours that you kind of want. And see, that's definitely not enough water. It's feeling quite viscous, so you just keep adding water till it's starting to feel better. And so the more water you add, the thinner the colour will be, but that can be desirable in some instances. It just depends on what you kind of want.
Once we've done one print on this block, so say we print it with this colour, and you know, we get a colour on our bread that looks perhaps a little yellow or a little red. Once that block's dried, can we use a different colour on that block? Or does it have to be pretty close to that colour?
No, you can use any colour.
We can change the colour completely.
Now we've got these registration marks. Once we do this colour, for example, if we wanted to add a second colour, second textural kind of thing happening, you could wait till the paper dries, ink it up with a different colour, and it'd be perfectly registered with these things. Yeah, you can add as many layers on the same block as you'd like.
So if we wanted to do a run of blue bread, once that block's dry, can we just ink it with a different colour?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's looking actually quite bang on to what's there.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay. I might add a bit more of this.
Sorry, so would it be better to have a dry paint or a wetter paint in general?
For this instance, I reckon wetter, on the wetter side. But if you're using a brush, you can go wetter. If you're using like a roller, for example, you'd want more tacky kind of ink. But what do you like that? Does that look like baked bread to you?
It does, you know, in a way, and I'm thinking that, given what I've seen in the photos that come with the kit, that if that's applied in a way that's not super thick and that won't necessarily penetrate the card totally, the effect it gives us of lightening it out a bit. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
That's right. So I reckon we'll start at the top, try and get it quite heavy up here, and then work down, make it a bit lighter.
Okay.
But first we're just going to wet this a bit. It doesn't have to be much, but if you just wet it just a little bit, it'll absorb this pigment a bit better. So I just think in circular motions, we'll kind of work our way down.
Okay.
See, this is coming on quite thick, isn't it, looking? So what we can do is add more water to this when we get a bit closer.
Oh, okay.
I've probably come down a bit too close, but you can see how it starts to
Sort of bleed down rather than soak down. Okay.
Okay. Let's give this a go.
Cool.
And so it's a bit wetter here, there's more pigment up there, and hopefully it'll have a bit of gradation.
You'll need this, I think, at some point.
Yes. So what I do is hold both sides with 2 fingers and then thumbs on the back, because they'll be the things pushing down after you've registered the paper. So I start with this corner, get it in there, locked, and then line up this end, and then you kind of like pat it down. Give it a bit of pressure, and we get this barren, which is, there's a coiled rope under here, and it's wrapped in bamboo. And you kind of bunch up your hand like that, and try and focus the pressure in the middle, and just small circles. And you can kind of tell, you can see through the paper a bit, it looks like they've done pretty even pressure around the bun. Now, very carefully peel it off.
Right.
And that's it so far.
Cool.
So it looks like I've over inked here. It's kind of come off the edge of the our nice line. But that's not too bad. This is the kind of, I like these little moments because it kind of adds to the handmade, hand printed kind of quality. So we'll just do this a few times. We've got a few bits of paper. I might try and wipe off some of this excess. Maybe try and get a bit more gradation. That looks quite nice. Looks like reasonably baked.
So would you usually take a few goes at a print?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You know, because colours often look different in your bowl compared to on the plate, compared to onto the paper. So this is the main trial and error kind of stage. Start at the top again. Try and get most of the pigment up there. And each time you do it, it will pigment will build up. You can see from the last print. So you can kind of use less and less the further you go. Okay, I might give that a go. Did you want to have a go?
Sure. All right.
So, and now get that corner in there first, and then line that up, and then you can kind of push it down just like that.
Cool.
Lovely. Yeah, and keep a finger on the paper just as an insurance policy. Okay, let's see how that goes.
Yep.
Now
So then lift.
Peel off one corner, yep. Oh, that's
Hello.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Beautiful.
Lovely. We may as well do
Do a couple.
a couple more.
Cool. So we have given the edges of the block a bit of a crisper finish. We've had a little bit of fun with the colour.
Yep.
And we'll go again.
I might do this one. Fingers.
So you're just pulling the pigment around.
Yeah. Let's see how that goes. So that's not as much ink as
The other
I've
one?
had on these other ones, but there's only one way to find out. So again, start with the L-shaped corner. Put that in. Make sure your hands are clean.
Do as I say. Yeah.
Yes. Ooh,
Great.
okay.
Lovely.
That's looking nice.
Very different texture to the others.
Yeah,
with
definitely,
that
hey.
sort of lighter.
And the
lighter
colour's
ink.
nice. And you can see some of the grain of the wood come through.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a bit too wet, maybe a bit too much water on it. But you don't know until you kind of keep doing these things. Alright, well I guess we'll wait till they dry a bit. And we'll do the black.
So wait till they're dry.
Yeah. Yeah. Just because you'll get bleed between the colours if there's still a bit of moisture in. What was the first one? This one? This
That
is
was the
starting
first
to get.
one.
That's nearly ready to print, but
Cool.
give another 5 minutes or so.
All right. Great. So now that we've got our prints dry, we can move on to the second side of the block and print the seeds. Cool.
Which will be black.
Yep.
And for this, we can use less water because we can. The more tacky we keep this, the more chance we can just kind of blotch it on the top of the relief. So we'll try with one of the badder prints first.
I love all my children equally.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
well, yours were great. Yeah, so it's quite tacky when it comes out of the tube. And we might leave it like that. Let's see.
Cool.
And we'll use a crappier one to begin with, just to see how much of the recesses get inked up and come through the onto the print. Looking pretty good so far.
Nice.
Looks lovely.
Great.
Okay.
How many prints, so if you've got something cut, how many prints would you try and pull off it in a go, in a session?
Really depends.
Okay.
But generally, you know, I'll try and get 10 nice prints. So some of the over-inked ones I wouldn't keep, but once everything dries, you try on the bad ones the second layer, and then, you know, I feel like 10's a nice number.
Yep.
But, you know, as many as you want, really. These blocks can be used again and again.
I really quite like the idea of putting in the hard work once and then having a really enjoyable process to just repeat whenever you want.
Yeah, that's it. There's a lot of delayed gratification, and that's quite nice when it pays off.
Is there any tricks to getting a dead straight line in your cut if you want a very straight
I
look?
use rulers all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would put a ruler along your V gouge, or
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I do that in nearly every print.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that there's the moment of truth, and you get as many moments of truth as you have prints.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
Lovely.
A grade.
Fantastic.
Nice one, Zephyr.
Here we go.
Beautiful.
Here we are.
Thanks. All right. Any thoughts on that, on the kit as a whole, in terms of the process?
It's really nice. The tools are really nice.
Mm-hmm.
They're sharp.
Mm-hmm.
They're nice to hold. This Baron's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You see, there's a lot of Barons out there that look similar, but they don't have the coiled rope underneath it, which really helps when you are burnishing. That the grooves that the coiled rope gives it more moments of, you know, pressure at certain points. It's a great little kit. I think it's really nice to see something like this you can dip your toe in, and
Great.
I can see people getting lost in this, I reckon.
I can see me getting lost in this, and I can see I know what I'm going to do with my cousins over Christmas.
Hell yeah.
This is easy. Yeah. Great. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming and carving with us.
Thanks for having me.
Great. See you next time.